Okay, now we're live.
Huzzah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Bogosity podcast catch-up hangout. We are live and covering the things we missed the last couple of weeks while I was on vacation. So with us so far is Charles Thomas.
Hello.
And Daniel Wilcox.
Hi there.
Oh,
Hi to you too. Cough up a lung for us.
Yes, the allergy season. That's just, keep
Oh,
spreading
tell me about it.
But anyway, let's get into, the insanity that is.
Yeah, we've got a lot to cover. I have 4 stories in use of the bogus, and I'll also give out 2 biggest Bogon emitter and idiot extraordinaire bestowals. So 2 hours if we do about 15 minutes each, which probably means I'll have to mute Charles or else it'll be like 8, but hey.
Well, don't worry. I'm going to be, I'll be out soon, so don't worry.
Chris said he might come, but he'd have to leave early, so we'll have to see who else shows up.
Trouble getting in.
Yeah, let's see. Let me try this. Let's see. Dang it! I wish there was a way you can just share the thing. You
should be able to just share the link.
Okay. All right. No, not that.
That was how you guys got in, wasn't it?
Yeah. I have no idea how that's. Google is a weird thing. It's a weird
I think you have to go through the Hangouts link, not the YouTube link.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get started. Hopefully he'll make his way in. Story is about the Intercept posting leaked documentation on Russian election hacking, basically saying that there wasn't any that was in any way successful, and no, it wasn't the DNC email thing. So what happened was Russians issued a cyber attack on at least one supplier of software for voting machines, and they also attempted spear phishing attacks on over 100 election officials, which is nothing that people didn't already figure, but now we have confirmation of it, which means we also have confirmation that Putin was lying when he said the Russian government didn't try to hack the election. Well,
let's be honest. I mean, there were a lot of all this other skullduggery going around with Russia and such. And I mean, they probably had their hands in some cases. And honestly, I don't trust Putin as far as I can throw him.
But it really does show that U.S. elections are at least somewhat hack-proof, not because of any amazing things our officials have done, but because it's decentralized, it's heterogeneous, and it's actually pretty inefficient. So,
yeah, well, huzzah! Hooray for our inefficiency. That's that's score for them.
Well, let's have what government is good at.
What, being inefficient?
Yes.
Now, what's amazing about this is that the Intercept reached out to the government for comment on May 30th, and by June 3rd, the government had figured out who the leaker was. And the way they did it is something that's been known about for a while. And hey, Chris, glad you make it.
Yeah, finally. Sorry about that. Yeah, ever since we installed Uverse, my computer, my main one, it's been acting like crazy.
Maybe it's trying to tell you something.
Yeah, we're in the middle of this Russian hacking story. Oh, dark person with not very good lighting.
Uverse is bloody rubbish.
Yeah. Russian hacking scam.
Yeah, and we're talking about the fact that the Intercept reached out to the government for comment on the leaks on May 30th. By June 3rd, like 4 or 5 days later, they had figured out who the leaker was. And the way they did it, it's something the security people have been known about for a while, but the public at large aren't really aware of it, and it's pretty disturbing. If you have a color printer, every time you print, many manufacturers put these invisible little yellow dots that you'll never see just by looking, but they can tell exactly what printer printed the document and when. And I have an article from Robert Graham of Errata Security, and should have it right here coming up. And so what he's saying is that most new printers, but I think they've been doing this for like at least 10 years or more, They print these invisible yellow dots that say when and where the documents are printed, and the NSA logs all of the print jobs on its printers. So when they get that, they say, okay, this was printed on this printer at this time. They just go back to their logs and they can know exactly which of their users sent that print job. So that's how they caught this reality winner person. I guess that's a code name, but
Reminds me of that story we covered a few years back of that guy who printed some sort of important documents he was ordered to print in like a really small font that doesn't scan well.
oh yeah, that was the lava bit stuff. The government ordered him to turn over his private keys, and so he printed them in 4-point type.
Hello.
So basically, oh, go ahead. All right. Basically, what you do is you just print a page, and then you scan it in, and then you put it into an image editor. And believe it or not, what you're wanting to look at is the blue channel, because blue is basically not yellow. If you look at blue and yellow on a color wheel, they're opposite. And then you invert the colors, and Robert Graham shows it doing that and how the little dots show up. And if we go down a bit, you can see that you can arrange them in a grid, and the grid tells you exactly what it is. So in this case, it was a printer with model number 54, serial number 295-35218, printed on May 9th, 2017 at 6:20.
It's actually pretty good.
And they obviously have a record of who used the printer at the time, because like I said, they log all of these. So.
Yeah.
All right, Charles has something going on in the background.
Sorry.
But this is some of the things that they do, as Robert Graham says, to be evil to you.
Right.
So, like, if you're trying to scan a $20 bill, obviously they want to try and stop counterfeiting. So one of the things they will do is they put these little yellow 20s there that you really can't see, but a scanner can, and so that they show up there. So if you try to counterfeit it, there's all these little yellow 20s on it. And the second thing is that when you print out, they have these little dots to be able to track the printouts. And I think that's about all I was going to quote from him. It does show, putting the dots in the grid and trying to figure out what it is. But I've also got a link to an EFF page going over it, and they say which printers are known to have it. And one disclaimer, as they say, the printers that they say aren't known to have the tracking dots on, they just haven't found it. That doesn't mean they're not there. There might need to be something extra they need to do that, but that's what's going on, and that's how they caught them. And every time you print a document on your color printer, if it's one of the printers that does these, it's going to have those tracking dots. Everybody there? Okay, I think I'm talking to myself.
Yeah, sorry, Shane. I'm just confused.
Yeah, sorry. This isn't really quite our forte, I don't think. And
Russia
that's
or
fine.
printers?
That's why it's got a co-host here to ask questions. But
So are we talking about the Russian hacking scandal or printers?
We're talking about how they caught the leaker that leaked the documents about the Russian hacking to the Intercept.
So they use printers. Oh, by the way, I'm back, by the way.
Hey, yeah, they use color printers, and the printers print out these invisible little yellow dots. But if you know how to make the dots show up, they show up in this little grid. And if you know how to read the grid, you can tell what printer printed that document and at what time.
Oh, that's
and is it from Russia or no?
Well, this document was from the NSA because it was leaked from the NSA to the Intercept.
God.
And that's how the NSA caught the hacker, because they knew which printer it was printed on and when, and they have a log of who's printing on their printers at what time.
Oh, great. Just another reason to hate printers.
Well, then again, it is the thing is, I love this, and later on the document says copies of printers have two features put in there by the government to be evil to you. First is scanners and copiers. and use a scam
Yeah.
feature. Recognize.
Next thing you know, you're going to tell me that the government's behind the reason why a lot of companies overprice the price of ink for printers.
Probably. It says recognize a barely visible pattern on currency, so they can't be used to account for money. Which doesn't stop people who actually does, you know, eventually people are like, oh, they probably found a way to get through that. Probably.
Yeah, but to answer your question, Chris, I think they have used IP to stop people from making their own compatible print cartridges.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Well,
all right. So, anyone else have anything to say on this story, or can we go to the next?
I'm just like, you know what? Hopefully, after all this stuff, maybe we can just move on from this. But looking at what people are saying on Twitter and everything else, I sadly expect not to. And well, this thing will be the story that will never die.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're going to be putting up with stuff like this for a while.
Yeah, they're never gonna let the rushing, supposedly Russian scandal go, until Trump leaves office, so
even then
you explain how their obviously superior candidate lost.
Yeah, and it's pretty funny because I still don't think Russia hacked us, and even if they did, what does Trump have to do with it?
They just want. They think, well, Trump is the evil person who's going to kill us all.
When I heard, the whole Russian, when I first heard the whole Russian scandal, I was just slapping my forehead, saying, "It's like, okay, are you Hillary Clinton supporters so sour that you would rather see a third world war than just admit you lost?"
Pretty much,
yeah.
It's like that's what I think. What they are, they're like, as you said earlier, Shane, in that one video about SJWs, they're just spoiled children who never learned how to lose, and if they can't have it, well, then no one can have it. So, them starting World War III is the equivalent of a child throwing a temper tantrum and breaking the toy so no one else can have it.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so our next story, we actually have a good ruling from the Supreme Court.
Well,
and
if
Supreme Court is kind of 50-50 a lot of time.
But, I mean, if this keeps up, hopefully we won't have to set fire to it like Venezuela did theirs. So there's this Asian American rock band called the Slants, and people say the name is racist, so I guess that's a reference to slanted eyes. So when they tried to trademark their name, the Patent and Trademark Office wouldn't let them because they said trademarks weren't allowed to, quote, disparage or bring into contempt or disrepute any persons living or dead. They sued,
and they probably pulled that rule out of their butts.
Of course they did.
That's what they keep. That's where they keep all their rules.
So they sued, and the case is Mattel versus Tam. The Supreme Court ruled unanimously, 8-0, that a ban on offensive speech is a violation of the First Amendment.
Yes, that's the one thing people. I mean, and here's something people like who are like against this don't realize, because once you say offensive speech should be banned, then it comes out what is offensive speech. Because I mean, what do you think about it? Like, for example, we are mostly people who are anti-war and such. What if you're saying, oh, your anti-war speech is against the troops, and there go, it caused all the trauma and everything else. So that means your anti-war speech, that's offensive speech, banned. Or the war on drugs. We have talked about how bad the war on drugs have hit many communities and such, and so on and such. And now, someone said, we don't want you that. You might disrespect or disrespect our police officers or what have you, and such like that. That's offensive speech. What will be the lines and everything else about offensive speech is? Because remember, freedom of speech is not there for cover the weather, or things that everyone's university will agree with.
Yep, and Charles, I was about to say this, it also works vice versa. Like that one incident where a gay couple got the court to force a Christian bakery to make them a wedding cake for a gay wedding. Well, a few months afterwards, a neo-Nazi group forced a Jewish-owned bakery to make them a swastika cake. And from what I heard, the lawyers on behalf of the neo-Nazi says, well, if gays are allowed to use government force to force their way, then the Nazis have every right. And the court said, yep, unfortunately, that's what it says.
That's how it goes.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And then all the SJWs were screaming that was promoting fascism, and then I'm like, well, how's it any different from earlier? And they're like, well, that's different.
Because reasons.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I was telling this to a friend of mine. I mean, it's so hilarious about how video games get so iffy over like this display of a swastika, but yet I see plenty of World War II games where they won't show the swastika, but they're more than happy to show the hammer and sickle.
Yeah,
which has done a lot of negative stuff as well.
Yeah,
and honestly,
more people by like tenfold or something.
And it pisses me off about how the swastika was basically culturally appropriated and such. Like that was usually used as a Buddhist symbol, and now it's used as people see it as a hatred and horrible.
And another funny.
Well, it was a lot more than that. Believe it or not, in the 19th century, there was actually a sect of Judaism, and their symbol was the swastika inside the Star of David.
Yeah, it's
oddly enough that the cross went through the opposite sort of transformation.
Yeah.
From a
So
negative
anyway, Alito wrote the majority opinion where he said, quote, "We now hold that this provision violates the free speech clause of the First Amendment. It offends a bedrock First Amendment principle. Speech may not be banned on the ground that it expresses ideas that offend."
Yes, and even interested about offensive idea. One of our main and positive speakers of history in the United States had, at the times, offensive speech. You look at, say, Martin Luther King. At that time, at the same time, or Malcolm X. Those were, if the rules against offensive speech was here back in the day, they would probably be, let's be honest, they would probably not have a chance to actually speak the words, to speak truth to power. That right there alone. Because again, a lot of people probably were offended with Martin Luther King saying, it's talking about the evils of Jim Crow. There were probably a lot of people were offended about that. So what are you going to say about this whole thing about saying, it's like they just seem to forget about history.
The founding fathers' speech was arguably hateful because, remember, they were, America was founded during a time where people still believed, that the king of their empire was all holy and mighty. And when you're criticizing the king, it's like saying, oh my God, you're committing blasphemy,
Yeah, and what do you think the Declaration of Independence was?
Yeah.
Obviously.
So Alito summarized the government's argument as, quote, "The government has an interest in preventing speech expressing ideas that offend," and he responded, quote, "That idea strikes at the heart of the First Amendment. Speech that demeans on the basis of race, ethnicity, gender, religion, age, disability, or any other similar ground is hateful, but the proudest boast of our free speech jurisprudence is that we protect the freedom to express the thought that we hate."
Yeah, that's what it is. And speech has to be, and I will always say this, and I mean, from the idiot, people who wrote the dumb speeches from the crazy people from like Alex Jones and all this stuff should be able to speak and such like that. I'm that type of crazy person that they should have a platform, but the platform is also there to rebut them, to sit there and actually to challenge their ideas. Because if you there are places, and I see some people you don't want to give platforms to speakers and stuff like that, and I get that. There's some people you don't want to give platforms to, but I think the main thing is, and I want to kid this. There's one thing that comes out of this, that the person speaking, they have ideas, and without crazy or anything else, the ideas do have somewhat, some merit has to be spoken. They have to be spoken, because without the speech being spoken or anything else, just without these words being spoken, these powerful ideas, they just go mute, and they should not be. People should not be afraid or scared, with governments or anything else, or what the crazy or idiotic idea might be. Heck, that idea, the crazy idea, might actually help propel people forward. Once upon a time, this country was, the idea of a republic was an insane idea. A long time ago, telling people, by the way, Earth is not the center of the universe and we revolve around the sun. A lot of people would say, what? But that's horrible. God created the world in his image. Why would he not make us the center of it? It would offend people like that,
They burned Giordano Bruno for that.
Yeah.
So Reason TV talked to Slants bassist Simon Tam. Wasn't that a Firefly character? But anyway, he said the whole point of the provocative name was to challenge anti-Asian stereotypes. Quote, "For me, this whole fight has not been just about the band name and our right to access the trademark registration. When I found out what the government was doing and how they were doing it, how they were using it to suppress speech, and how they were trying to take rights away from my own community, I decided that it was not right. So all of a sudden, it became about principle. When I believe they are violating the values of our country and violating my own values, I decided that had to be stopped, no matter the cost."
Yep.
Agreed.
And this is what I've said before. There is no free speech without offensive speech. Speech that isn't offensive to anyone doesn't need to be offended.
Yep.
So the only time you need to defend someone's right to free speech is when he's saying something that offends someone else, and that someone else is trying to silence him.
And not to mention, and I've told this to people before, the reason why we should end the war on offensive speech is because, let's face it, every single word phrase out there is going to offend someone. There's nothing you can do about it. You know, I mean, and I tell this to people, it kind of reminds me about that paradox one time where they were talking about where, because of the whole controversy with trigger warnings, that some colleges were actually issuing trigger warnings for the trigger warning. It's like,
Wow.
it's like, what are you?
Well, that's meta.
Yeah, what are you going to do next? Are you going to issue a trigger warning for the trigger warning for the trigger warning for the trigger warning? It's like that's that catch-22 thing or whatever. You know, it's like, you can't have your cake and eat it at time. You know, the truth is someone's going to be offended.
I'm offended by that cake, actually.
Yeah.
I'm offended by you being offended by that.
Yeah. Kind of
we can do this all day.
That reminds me of that joke from South Park, Sexual Harassment Panda, where it's like, we don't take kind to panda bears here. Well, we don't take kindly to you. Well, we don't take kindly to people who don't take kindly around here. Then they're like, what? Yeah.
All right. Anything else before we move on?
Nope. Other than to anyone who says we still need to ban offensive speech, grow some balls. Or ovaries.
All right. Another awesome ruling. This one against the FBI regarding the Playpen website. We talked about that. You know, they set up a website with actual child porn on it so they can put malware on the computers of people who visited the site.
Yep.
Well, a federal magistrate.
Isn't that entrapment?
Yeah.
It's funny. We have entrapment laws, but there's also a loophole in the law that the police obviously put in there for themselves that says it's not entrapment if we say it isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a federal magistrate just ruled that law enforcement officials do not get to break the law to catch criminals.
That should be. So, you know what? That's good. I mean, I can't believe we had to say that. I hate to say that because honestly, it's this whole notion of this whole Jack Bowery trying to be like, that type of stuff. We break the law, but it's only for a good reason. No, it's not for good reason. The laws are there for a reason, and then you break them in order to suit for this guy or gal or whatever. At the end of the day, you've basically trampled on so many people's rights, so many the ideals, the rights, and everything's around it to catch this person. And at the end of the day, the person probably won't even serve will not serve as many years because you violate these rules.
Yeah,
so,
and I'm gonna say this. This reminds me because yesterday I was watching the new Resident Evil CGI movie, not the Paul W. Anderson movies, but the new one. It was Vendetta, and there was a scene where one of the characters, Leon, is fighting these zombies, and while killing a couple of zombies, there's people on the highway, normal people who are evacuating, and he causes a car wreck, which causes two cars to crash into each other and explode. And I'm like, wow, who's the hero again?
And Blake Pettis just joined us.
Yep,
Welcome back, Blake.
He even actually pointed that out in the movie because earlier one of the main villains is making a new bioweapon that turns people into zombies, and the reason was because in order to combat the war on bioterrorism in the Resident Evil universe, they dropped a bomb on his wedding, and they failed to kill him, but they killed a whole bunch of innocent people whose only crime was being associated with him. It's like
So basically what the FBI did was they set up this website so they could use malware, which they call a NIT, or Network Investigative Technique. And they put it on more than 8,000 computers, basically as a general warrant to get their IP addresses, MAC addresses, open ports, lists of running programs, operating system types, versions and serial numbers, preferred browsers and versions, registered owners and registered company names, current logged in usernames, and their last visited URL. The judge said, you got to be kidding. That is so unconstitutional. And he's recommending that all of the reams of evidence they collected under this warrant be considered inadmissible in something like 900 different criminal cases they have against this.
Well, yeah, it's entrapment, you know, and that's another thing that a lot of these, you know, guys don't think about it.
He's not talking about entrapment. He's talking about it being a general warrant, which is not what the Constitution allows. It allows specific warrants.
Yeah. You know, yeah, it sucks how the cops are always trying to work their way past, you know, the law. You know, I mean, I even read a story about one time where the FBI got, you know, arrested a guy like out of the blue, and when they were questioned, well, did you have a warrant for this guy's arrest? Yeah, we have a warrant for his arrest. But then the guy's lawyer did a little investigating, and he found out the FBI guys gave themselves the warrant. They filed it like a couple hours beforehand, and apparently there was a little loophole in the law that said certain federal agents, you know, if they're a certain rank, which these FBI guys were, could write their own warrants.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, I look at the whole case about the playpen, and I do see what they were trying to do. They were trying to trap a lot of these horrible people and such into this, you know, these you know, the child molesters and all this type of stuff. And I get that, and I understand what they were doing, and I really, you know, this is why I want them to cross the I's and dot the T, you know, dot the I's, cross the T's, and all these type of things to make sure everything is above board. Because if you slip up just once on all these type of things, don't think any of those defendants have a good lawyer on their case. Like, oh, they slipped up. That means my client didn't really do anything wrong, and they go and get free. So this stuff right here, you have to make sure that these, if you want to go after these people, you have to make sure that you do everything by the book.
So for an example, this Naked Security article talks about Terry Lee Carlson, a 47-year-old from Minnesota, arrested following. They called it Operation Pacifier. I mean, who comes up with these names?
Yeah, and not to mention.
Anyway.
Can I just say
wasn't
something?
that a Vin Diesel movie?
Yeah. Can I also just say something real quickly? It's kind of a funny joke. So they actually used actual child porn on this website.
Yes.
Would that mean they're breaking their own law? You know?
Yes, that's the whole point.
Yeah, it's like
that's the whole point. They're breaking the law.
Yeah, it's like, okay, we're gonna try to catch people for being in possession of child porn. Now let's grab all this child porn we have for who knows where and let's post it somewhere.
So when they raided Carlson's home, they got 20 storage drives and all sorts of other things. The magistrate is recommending that be suppressed, claiming that they had no jurisdiction to have this warrant span the entire planet, which is basically what they're saying. And so what he said was, quote, "The government claims legal authority from this single warrant issued in the Eastern District of Virginia to hack thousands of computers in 120 countries and to install malicious software for the purpose of investigating and searching the private property of uncounted individuals whose identities and crimes were unknown to the government before launching this massive worldwide search."
Yeah, and I guess Minority Report wasn't a science fiction movie. It was a documentary.
There's a similar story like that coming out of Japan. We might cover it next week, but they're trying to go after people they think are going to commit crimes.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, one person pointed out the biggest plot hole and why trying to predict crimes should never work. Because, like, if you could magically predict the future and you wanted to use it to predict crimes, well, you wouldn't see. Well, the psychic wouldn't see the person committing the crime. They'd see the person being arrested for committing the crime.
I think in Minority Report they were actually seeing the crime itself.
Yeah, like.
Yeah.
But still,
anyway,
it's.
Anyway, he said, quote, "This court is aware of no lawful way for the government to deploy this investigative technique. Assuming without deciding that some way could be devised to use the technology employed here, the court concludes that the government, by using the NIT malware to collect data from Carlson's activating computer, conducted an unlawful search that was not supported by a lawful warrant. And he also said, quote, "The purpose and flagrancy of the FBI's misconduct in attempting to obtain the NIT warrant and deploying the NIT malware is truly staggering. The FBI facilitated the victimization of minor children and furthered the commission of a more serious crime, the distribution of child pornography, to primarily identify offenders committing less serious crimes, viewing and receipt of child pornography."
Yeah, and I understand you want to protect the children and all that, but I'm just going to say this right here, and I'm not trying to say like I'm defending pedophiles or anything, but just because a guy's looking at child porn doesn't mean he actually wants to go out and rape a child,
Maybe that's why Comey was fired.
Yeah, it's...
That is true. So unless they have the, you know what I'm saying, like you have the... what's the word? If you have the intention or intent to do harm, that's the thing. If you have intent to do harm, then you can go to, that's the thing, right? I mean, intent. That's the main thing. If you have no intent, well,
yeah.
But I mean, it's one of those things where I think that they haven't quite gone so far as to say just being a pedophile is illegal, but I mean, I've got a couple of quickies coming up on this, like how in Australia, even if the model is of age, if she just has like an A cup or something like that, that counts as child pornography. In the UK, you can have drawings that are when no children are actually involved, so there's no one actually being harmed.
Yeah, I actually heard a story like that. Actually, when I was working at Walmart, one of our employees got fired because they claimed he possessed child porn. But one of the employees I was talking to who knew the guy said that guy didn't have child porn. I mean, okay, technically, yes, he had pictures of naked girls who were 16. But here's the thing: it was hentai cartoons. Those girls weren't real. They were just drawings.
So anyway, finishing off this story, Mark Ramold, senior staff attorney at EFF, said, quote, "We have appropriate and time-tested Fourth Amendment limits. Unfortunately, in this case, the FBI did not do that. They just threw caution to the wind and got the broadest authority that they could conceive of. It's going to have consequences down the line."
It's going to. It already has.
Well, hopefully it has a lot more. So.
Yeah. Not to mention...
You need to really say, look, we got to stop this whole general warrants thing.
Not to mention, and we've pointed this out before, another unintended consequence of this law is that, is like the FBI claims, well, we're only using it to look for child porn, but other government agencies have said, let's do the exact same thing. Well, let's look for other criminals we don't want. Like, like what they did with some of the people using the black web, they were trying to find drug dealers.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's something else this might apply to if you have a narc who's posing as a drug dealer selling drugs. By this same logic, possessing drugs is a lesser crime than selling drugs. So again, they would be committing a greater crime to try and stop a lesser one,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
Actually, this reminds me of a story that one of my friends told me, because he knew a guy who used to get into the dark world, and he said, you know how you can tell the difference between if a dealer is legitimate or if he's a narc? If he's very eager to meet you right away, he wants to get that deal done in there, you should tread with caution, because that's a good sign he might be a narc.
Yeah, because a real drug dealer is going to be worried that he might be selling to a narc.
Yeah, he's gonna. A real dealer is gonna be more like, I'll think about it, but, we gotta, talk to each other. We gotta hang out with each other first, for a while. Whereas a narc is gonna be like, okay, yeah, I have drugs. Here, come over to my place right here at this time, right away, and I'll sell them to you.
All right. Anything else on this story before we go to the next one?
Nope. I'm good.
All right. So the next one is something we've talked about before. The government keeps saying they need to break into our crypto to catch terrorists, but As the Manchester and London attacks show, once again, they can't even catch them when encryption isn't an issue. And this is something that, Theresa May has been really hitting since then. Basically, I think she wants to shut down the entire internet is basically what it sounds like.
Oh, there's a few politicians that are like that.
Oh, yeah, because if you make a internet, oh my gosh, the internet, that's the way the terrorists are coming up, and they keep slipping up because we have to strong crypto, all this other stuff, and then meanwhile they're just posting this stuff on Twitter and Facebook, and they're just laughing off away and doing all that crazy stuff. They're overthinking these issues. That's the problem is that they're overthinking it.
I honestly think that these guys that want the government to get into encryption, I think they honestly know that less encryption would have stopped the terrorists. It's just that they want these rules passed and they're just using it as an excuse.
Hey, I'm gonna head out now. So
all right.
Take care, Daniel.
Yep. Bye.
Yep.
See you later, baby.
I can hang out with you guys for about 30 more minutes, but then I got.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're actually ahead of where I was thinking anyway, so that'll be fine. So the Telegraph reported, quote, counterterrorism agencies were facing questions after it emerged Salman Abedi, not sure if that's how it's pronounced. We need Ibrahim here for this. He told friends that being a suicide bomber was okay, prompting them its anti-terrorism hotline. Sources suggest that authorities were informed of the danger posed by Abedi on at least 5 separate occasions in the 5 years prior to the attack on Monday night.
Yeah. Wow. See, it's like I said, overthinking it.
Yeah, it's like, the real sad truth is that a lot of people love to look for these patterns, but the real sad truth is that you can't really predict these guys,
They want to find the easy way and such, but it's not. It's hard to find them, and it's always this whole, oh my gosh, we got to find this stuff. We have to do this. We got to do it. I'm like, no, it's not like that.
Yeah, going back to gun control, the same thing. A lot of people like to say, okay, so this mass shooter had a mental disorder, so therefore we should pass a law that prevents anyone with a mental disorder from buying a gun. Yet they completely ignore the fact that millions of people in America have mental disorders and they don't go on shooting rampages.
We've talked about this before. People with mental disorders are no more likely to commit acts of violence, but they are 10 times as likely to be victims of violence.
Pretty much. And sorry, go ahead.
And that hurts me on a personal level because I have a brother who's, even though he's in his 30s, he's still very disabled. And he was in a former situation where he was violently threatened by a roommate who was not as disabled. And so he needed to be able to be protected, at least if not by him, then by his guardian.
Yeah. So CNN reported on the more recent London attacks, quote, London attack ringleader Kurhan Butt, yes, that's his name, Butt, was identified as it's probably Butte or something, but I'm going to say Butt, was identified as a major potential threat, leading to an investigation that started in 2015. Butt was seen as a heavyweight figure in Al-Muhajirin, I don't know how that's pronounced, whose hardline views made him potentially one of the most dangerous extremists in the UK. The investigation into Butt involved a full package of investigatory measures, and he was even filmed in a 2016 documentary entitled The Jihadis Next Door, and he showed a black flag that was associated with ISIS. He unfurled it in London's Regent Park, and even though police were present during the filming, they did nothing to follow up on it.
Can I just say something, Charles? This might be a little off topic, but this kind of reminds me of that recent mosque attack in London where there's this guy, Paul Joseph Watson, who I like to watch, even though he can be a little bit of a nut at times, but he brought up a really good point. He says, look,
Isn't he on InfoWars?
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
He's kind of the sane person on InfoWars, though.
Yeah, he seems to be better than most people on that site.
But that's not saying much.
Sorry. I was just about to say this. Sorry, I didn't hear you. My computer crashed briefly, but...
Okay.
Yeah,
go on with what you were saying.
Well, Paul Joseph Watson, basically, he brought up a good point when he was talking about the mosque, and he wasn't saying he was condoning the attack. Far from it. He was condemning the guy who committed the mosque attack. But what I loved what he was pointing out was the hypocrisy, because here's the thing: when the London attacks occurred, in fact, the London and Manchester attacks occurred, everyone was saying we need to move on, we need to pray for peace and just move on. What happens when a quote-unquote right-winger commits a terrorist attack? Oh, we got to start censoring. We got to shut down, right-wing hate speech sites. And Paul Joseph Watson was saying, what happened to pray and move on?
I mean, that's what it is. It's narratives. And
yeah.
And I think a lot of people see, and let's be honest here, there are a lot of hate groups and a lot of hate crimes and such that done majorly in not only this country and everything else. And, the stats don't bear out that, white people, they do crazy stuff and, then hate filled and such like that. But the one thing and people will say, oh, well, what do you want to do? Like, oh, we should do the same thing what we do with the mountain. No, it doesn't work. What we can do is look and find out what are the causes of it, and instead of just sitting around praying and doing other stuff, let's actually do our due diligence. And yes, you should not use the tragedies as for political propaganda. That's how we get into these messes to begin with. This is how we always and after these terrorist attacks, I guarantee you there's somebody in that parliament, someone out there are just gonna say, oh, and probably just wringing their hands like this. Oh, yes, that means all my little bills and everything else to get through, and more money for me, more anything else, and all this type of stuff to cause more war profiteering, more people getting killed and destroyed, which is the main cause of these calamities. It is the main cause of all this death and destruction is to go in and blow more people up, even though it will cost like families and families, friends, and everyone else around them. Like, and why don't we get not to mention, and I've told this to several of my friends, we're blowing up the wrong people too. Like, one could make an argument that ISIS could be a legitimate threat, but when you blow up a Middle Eastern country or another group that has nothing to do with ISIS, you're not helping.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, that's what happened. There was, there were a couple of terrorist attacks, and who did people blame? Syria. Yet, for all the sins that Assad has done in Syria, he's fighting ISIS, and he's doing a good job at it.
Well, so was Saddam Hussein.
Well, we're trying to fight the Syrian rebels, and we're also trying to fight Assad at the same time. So
right.
Yeah. So
anyway,
oh, sorry, Shane.
Yeah. So anyway, in 2015, the Intercept looked at 10 high-profile terrorist attacks around the world. In every single case, at least some of the perpetrators were already known to the authorities. So strong encryption is not the issue; it's the incompetence of authorities. And
the same thing happened of all these other things. The same thing happened to Paul Snykup. They said there was information about this person. Same thing with all these other people, like from the LA stuff too, the California stuff, is that they have the information, yet they don't do. In fact, I remember the shoe bombing guy. His own dad went up and said, my son is doing some really stuff. And what did they do? They sat on it. Again, it's just incompetence. And this breeds the people from, like, saying, we're talking about influencers. That breeds that type of stuff. It's like they see it as a known maleficent, whatever, whatever that word is. But it is something that they see it as that, like they know, and yet they do nothing. It's not just maleficent. It is just incompetence.
Yeah, it's like and Shaw is also like that incident with the Islamic rape gangs in the UK. The police had all these pictures. They had video evidence showing that there was a group of Muslim men. They were going around raping young women and boys, particularly ones who weren't Islamic, and the police were told by their local governor, or whatever the term is, don't pursue the case because we don't want to look like we're a bunch of racists who hate refugees.
No, that's
been a big problem throughout Europe.
Yeah, but that's horrible. That's terrible. I mean,
that's my one thing I disagree with InfoWars on is, like, I don't think the solution is to ban Muslims. Really, the problem is with what's going on in Europe is that the European countries are so obsessed with looking politically correct, they're not protecting and enforcing their laws. You know,
and I'm sorry, but this hurts not only that, but it hurts the immigrant community as well, because again, it's social. It is the social, like it's like the people, the perception, social perception of like
guilt by association.
Exactly. Without talking and say, okay, let's arrest these people. In fact, the only time it got actually brought up is that the immigrant communities had to bring it up and say, hey, this is wrong. We have to go and do this, instead of no one else in the community says this. Like, to me, and again, as the sole black person, and they're, and all this stuff, the sole, whatever, minority voice, whatever. If you're doing wrong, if you're doing dirt, you should go. People should not be afraid to call it out. They should not, especially in your own community and such. Individuals and stuff and all that type of stuff. It is so if the community voices are ignored, because it just seems to me it's just this whole just trying to get these little points, like saying, yes, I'm moral, I'm good, I'm not going to point this out. If you're not going to point out evil, you're just basically handcuffing them. You're infantizing them. You're making them like children. To me, that is the biggest slap in the face of all.
Yeah, a friend of mine told me a story about how one of his buddies actually was talking to a couple of, Somali girls in their hijab, and, eventually they accused him, of being anti-Islamic, because he kept asking them, why do you wear that? You don't have to wear that here. And when they finally demanded to know, why are you forcing this? He's like, I'm not forcing it. The reason why I'm asking you is because I think, there is good things about Islam, but you're not going to be able to get those good things out unless you learn that a lot of those laws in your religion are silly and outdated, and you got to reform it,
So getting back to the topic, which is the strong encryption and mass surveillance and wanting backdoors, I think it's good, when an FBI whistleblower in 2014 came out and explained it, was like, look, when you're going through all this stuff and you're trying to find a needle in the haystack, it doesn't help to add more hay.
Yep.
Yeah, this is kind of like a huge argument against the NSA spying.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, it is. Oh, yeah.
That's a thing. That's a thing that I tell people all the time whenever they say we need more laws. In fact, if anything, you're helping criminals by passing more laws, because when all you do is just try to outlaw stuff, eventually there's so many laws that if a criminal is smart enough, he'll just slip right through, because he'll get lost in the noise. That's how Bernie Madoff got.
The police are spending so much time looking for people in possession of a plant.
Yeah. That's actually partially also how Bernie Madoff got away with his pyramid scheme, was because by the time he was launching his scheme, there were so many laws, governing, how you can do your money, that they were investigating him, and they couldn't find it because they kept getting lost. And finally, it wasn't until his own kids, showed, the FBI, okay, here's a list of all the documents of our father. This is what he's been doing. Arrest him.
That right there.
Yeah, it's like that's what happens with strong encryption. A lot of governments guys say, but if we have backdoors, we'll be able to find the guy. Well, yeah, but here's the thing: if you have a backdoor, not only can a guy get in, he can also get out. He'll slip right out before you even get in there. All
right. Anything else on this one?
Nope.
Well, what do you guys think about people who say that because Poland banned Muslim immigration, and they've supposedly not had any Muslim attacks this year?
The biggest predictor by far of whether you have a terrorist attack is how many troops you have in the Middle East. And it's not just Poland who has been free of attacks. It's been Switzerland and a bunch of others.
Yep.
And there's like 7 or 8 of them that have had no attacks. And what do they all have in common? No troops in the Middle East.
Yep,
exactly.
And Shane, here's something I'll point out. I've been seeing a lot of, pro-Putin people saying, oh, yeah, well, Russia's in the Middle East, and they've been bombing the hell out of ISIS, and they've been fighting him. We're a peaceful country. But I've been looking up Russian media. It turns out there have been, now not on the same scale as in America, but there have been several terrorist attacks in Russia.
Exactly. So it's the number of troops.
Yep.
But that's, I think we can, I think we should end it right there. But, but most countries aren't going to get it. In fact, most people won't get it either.
Yeah. Not to mention, as many people point out, they'll say, but if we don't have troops in the Middle East, then how are we going to fight ISIS? It's simple. It's simple. You know, if you don't bomb their country, next time ISIS shows up in a village and says, we need to rally against the Western world and destroy those infidels, the people are going to be like, why? What did the West do to us? If anything, you're the crazy guys. In fact, that's what the Middle East was like for a long time before the Soviet Union and the United States got involved.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, let's do our first biggest Bogon emitter. And this one, nominated by Libertarianist, is the Denver Post. It's not just an article about it, it's them. They're saying that Colorado's falling unemployment rate is a bad thing.
Wait, what?
Colorado's unemployment rate crossed into uncharted waters in April, dropping to a record low 2.3%. The rate is so low, it's acting like an anchor on the state's economy, leaving thousands of jobs unfilled and hurting the ability of businesses to meet consumer demands.
What?
By that they mean they don't have enough tax revenue.
Yeah, it's like,
I guess.
Okay, first they're saying that the reason why capitalism is bad is because we have poor homeless people on the street, and now they're saying capitalism is bad because we don't.
That doesn't.
Well,
this
so
makes
here's
not any sense logically.
Yeah.
Well, here's what Gary Horvath, an economist with Broomfield, says, quote, "This is saying that Colorado has one of the most inefficient economies in the country. Colorado companies cannot find workers, much less qualified workers.
They don't need new workers.
It's efficient, I guess, to have people milling around not working."
You know what this kind of reminds me of, Shane? This reminds me of, I believe it was this one California governor and all that, and he was bragging about how, oh, you know, our state has all these welfare programs, we have all these charities and all that. And then one guy said, well, then how come you have one of the highest unemployment rates in the United States?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so this is also what Ryan Gedney, labor economist with the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment, said, quote, "When we get to unemployment rates this low, you can't sustain the pace of job growth." Yeah, you know, once you've hired everybody, you can't hire anyone more. That's kind of how the math works.
Yeah, you know. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because people change their jobs all the time, you know.
Yeah, again,
yeah.
This is something we should be celebrating. I mean, a low unemployment means that people have a lot more people are jobs, they're employed, they're not worried, and this is
they're not on the street getting drunk or high and and mooching off of welfare. They're actually being productive citizens.
So here's what Libertarianist had to say when he nominated it, quote, "Starting about a year ago, everything started getting very good for my fiance and me. My fiance changed jobs from one that paid $20 an hour with employee paid benefits to a $25 an hour job with employer paid benefits. I went from having no job to a part-time job on a freight dock for $16.16 an hour to an office job at $19.26 an hour after only 1 year. The initial offer detailed that my pay would increase by 50 cents every 90 days, so nearly 1/3 of that 20% increase was unexpected and unasked for. I am now leaving that job for a full-time position with lots of opportunities for advancement. The job market in Denver has been fantastic, at least for me. Sadly, I see that coming to an end as Amendment 70 gets put into effect over the next few years. The amendment, which passed this last November, hiked the minimum wage from $8.31 an hour to $12 an hour by 2020.
Oh yeah. Wait a minute, guys. Where you that's the solution. Raise the minimum wage. Well, why being so greedy? Why $12 an hour? Why not tell that everyone has to be paid $50 an hour? That'll fix some poverty.
Well, I mean, they deny up and down a blue streak that minimum wage causes unemployment, and then they go, "Hey, there are too many jobs. Let's increase minimum wage and get unemployment up."
Wow.
Yeah. And it's interesting how when you see these low unemployment rates and these low things which should be celebrated, this is a victory. Shouldn't it be champagning this?
Yeah,
and this should not. It just doesn't make any logical sense to me when I look at this article and I'm like, okay. I mean,
I think the takeaway here is that you can find an economist to back up any old crap you want to.
Yeah, pretty much. And
if Paul Krugman has an economist license, then yeah, there are stupid economists out there.
Yeah, that's why people say, to try to refute what we say about like the Great Depression and other things like that. Like, we have economists on our side. Well, the empirical data should back up what actually happened.
Kind of reminds me of this one. Kind of reminds me of this one conversation I had. With a, with a communist one time. He's like, well, we have economists that say communism can work. Yeah. And then I told, well, then how come, all these famous and well-respected economists say communism can't work? And they said, yeah, but they were all with the Austrian school, so they're biased, so they don't qualify.
Yeah, because no other economists are biased.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
No,
nope,
other than your fucking stupid Colorado.
Agreed.
This reminds me of these articles that say that, like, legalizing drugs would be raising the minimum wage would be a boon to the economy by $10 trillion. Like,
yep.
9,000 fallacy much?
Can you please show your work?
Yeah.
We might want to ask the same thing of our second biggest Bogon emitter, Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, who claims that, quote, we lose 93 million Americans a day to gun violence. Wow, at that rate, every American will be dead by Tuesday.
1/3 of the country. 1/3.
More like a fourth, I think.
1/3, 1/4, but that is a huge margin. But yeah, it's funny how all this other stuff about gun violence, and they're trying to say, well, they're trying to rock that back. But you know what? I'm going to say this right now. Even if you put the gun violence and all the gun control, what they wanted, they still wouldn't get rid of the gun violence in this country because, one, they can't even stop a plant from getting in this country. They can't stop all these other things getting in the country. And then you're going to put more money and more power into the police or federal agencies to stop another inanimate object. And whoop, don't be surprised, it will fail again.
Yep, I told this to an anti-gun person one time. I asked him, it's like, look, we know prohibition doesn't work with alcohol. We know it doesn't work with drugs. What the hell makes you think it's going to work with guns?
Exactly.
Yeah,
or immigration, but that's another issue.
Yeah, that's another thing. They always ignore the black market. They always ignore, the loopholes and all that. It's just.
Yeah. So he was speaking to reporters about the Alexandria shooting, and he said, "This is not what today is about, but there are too many guns on the street. We lose 93 million Americans a day to gun violence. I've long talked about this. Background checks, shutting down gun show loopholes.
No such thing."
Yeah, I know. That's not for today's discussion, but it's not just about politicians. We worry about this every day for all of our citizens. And so a reporter said, if it's not for today, then why are you bringing it up? And he said, well, because it's a very serious issue.
Yeah, Shane, I gotta go to a baseball game.
All right.
Yeah,
thanks for joining, Blake. And win and all that type of stuff.
Yep. I still got 15 more minutes, so
cool.
Yep.
So when a reporter questioned his 93 million number, he said, "Did you mean to say 93 million?" And McAuliffe responded, 93 million, 93 individuals a day. So now, even if he meant 93 and not 93 million, he'd still qualify, because the only way you can get to that level of supposed gun violence is if you include suicides.
Yep.
That's right there. And that's the thing right there. A lot of people won't get into it. Like, go see all the gun, like, yes. And you can look at all the shootings and such. Mostly in these gun violence stuff, it's probably, most of them probably involve the war on drugs and how police and the criminal side. If you take that down, I guarantee you most of the war on those gun sites will go down. And people say, well, see, if we just get this gun control, this whole mythical gun control that will prevent everything else. And even people I talk to and pin them down, they say, we'll prevent this. Like, no, but it will make us feel better. I'm like, that's it.
But,
it's a placebo
when you look at the actual FBI statistics, the actual number of people killed every day in gun homicides is 32. But keep in mind, homicides includes things like self-defense. When other countries like the UK do it, they only look at convictions And of course, the gun control nut bars will say, oh, well, look at that. Look at how much lower their number is. And that's how well gun control works. But when you actually look at people who are actually convicted, meaning they committed actual murder and you could prove it and it wasn't self-defense or anything, that number drops to 16. So 16 down from 93.
And not to mention, and I like how one friend told me this one time, every time someone says, did you know every year so-and-so people are killed by guns? He says, here's one thing I always ask them. Yeah, and how many of those people who were killed by guns were the government holding them?
That's true.
Yeah. That's another thing that they don't.
Or how many is related to the war on drugs or anything else like that?
Yeah, that's another thing that a lot of those anti-gun people don't understand is acknowledge the gun in the room. Because you'll disarm the citizens, but how are you going to enforce the law? You need to have a government force with guns to go around making sure people don't own the guns.
All right, anything else on this one?
Nope, other than another stupid politician.
Yep. Okay, on to our first idiot extraordinaire. We don't have Daniel with us to yell it out for us, but whatever. All right, so our first one is going to be PETA, and I'm throwing in, hang on, I got to get, where's my, there we go, PETA, and I'm throwing in David Slater as well, and we've talked about these guys before. Slater is the guy who gave the camera to the monkey, and the monkey took the selfie, and the selfie went viral, and David Slater and PETA both came in to argue that the monkey had a copyright claim on the photo. And we showed that you can't do that because only a human can have a copyright. And even in the law itself, it gives as an example of something that cannot be copyrighted a photo taken by a monkey.
Yeah. But Shane, animals are people too.
Well, here it just took a turn from the bizarre because even though neither of them have any sort of copyright for it, they're actually going against each other.
The stupid continues. They pile up the stupid.
Well, it gives us something to talk about at least. So not only in the US, but in Indonesia as well, where the monkey is, copyright is only available for human creations. PETA, of course, as we covered, was arguing that it should hold this non-existent copyright because potato.
Yeah.
Well, PETA was represented by the law firm Irell and Manella, and the lawyer, who was this big-time, firm on copyright issues, said there has to be a copyright in the image because apparently they're saying there's no such thing as the public domain.
Wait, what? That's good for this one. Most first of all, that's my first song I came forever when I did my little podcast at Dixie Lounge. Came from the public domain. So I'm like, But
according to them, everything that gets created automatically has a copyright and nothing can be in the public domain. So PETA teamed up with a primatologist named Antje Engelhardt, and he's an expert on macaques. And they brought him in, and he, said all this stuff about how smart monkeys are and things like that. Well, the judge quickly and correctly pointed out that monkeys can't get a copyright and that PETA and Engelhardt have no case at all. PETA appealed with even more business about, no, macaques are smart, and how smart you are has nothing to do with whether you can hold a copyright.
Yeah, it's exactly. People fail to realize the difference between humans and animals.
Animals don't have really rights.
No.
They don't have.
Chris, you dropped out for that, so you'll have to repeat it.
Oh, I was about to say the difference between humans and animals isn't our intelligence, it's our reasoning and rationality.
Yes.
Yeah.
The reason and such, even though most humans don't use it sometimes, but I include myself in that.
That's why I will say this. It's just a random thing, but that's why I laugh at all those ocean people who say dolphins are smarter than humans because they can obey vocal commands and all that. And I'm like, yeah, well, so can my dog, and I'm not going to say my dog's a genius.
Yeah.
It's just
so things got weird when the appeals process started. Engelhardt dropped out of the case, and didn't give any reason. But even without her, the case is moving forward, apparently based on what Engelhardt has been said, but apparently she's now facing criminal charges in New Jersey for harassing PETA's general counsel, whose name is also on the case, and for trespassing on his property. And they say, quote, the named defendant did enter into redacted the place, I guess, of Jeffrey Kerr, a place to which notice against trespass was given by actual communication to the defendant, knowing that she or he was not licensed or privileged to do so, specifically by ringing the doorbell of the residence, the owner telling subject to leave the residence, and the subject walked into the backyard of the residence. And Engelhardt is now facing criminal charges before it. According to Slater's lawyers, quote, regardless of the merits or outcome of the criminal case against Dr. Engelhardt, its very existence is a relevant consideration on whether PETA can adequately represent the interests of Naruto, notwithstanding the documented animosity that has developed between PETA and Dr. Engelhardt.
Yeah, it's...
But again, none of this matters because a monkey can't have a copyright.
Yeah, and PETA is so crazy and all that. You know, it's like, I mean, I'm surprised because there was one time where I think they deserved an idiot extraordinaire. There was this one time I remember where they were outside, you know, trying to stop a hunt, even though it was on private property. And when they were told to leave, they left. And as they were driving, they ran over a deer. And who did they blame? They blamed those humans because the deer were overpopulated and running around like rampant. It's like,
yeah,
that's the thing I really laugh at with like a lot of vegans and PETA groups is that they're always special pleading. You know, it's always them evil humans, but if you show them a picture of a wolf tearing apart a coyote for no reason other than I didn't like it, they're like, well, that's different. They're natural creatures.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
All right, anything else on this?
Nope.
All right. So finally, our second idiot extraordinaire. Once I scroll back to the top, here we are. It's U.S. Customs and Border Control who have announced that locked travel bags are, get this, drug paraphernalia.
Of course, everything to them is, everything. They're trying so hard to get money back on this war on drugs. So they're trying so hard to make it seem like it's a way to get back people. Yeah, let's get it. The war on drugs. We're beating it. Yeah, see, we're going after people. Meanwhile, we're wasting all this money and time. Meanwhile, over people in Ohio, they're overstacking. They can't fill morgues anymore because people are ODing so much.
Oh, what's gonna be next? Are you gonna ban people from bringing their rectums on the plane because some people have used their rectums to hide contraband? Actually,
well,
no.
And the reason wasn't even that they were using it to hide contraband. They were just using this to keep marijuana away from their kids.
Oh, how dare those parents try to not let their kids get a hold of drugs?
So this is Stash Logics, which Skip Stone started in 2015, importing combination lock travel bags so that people can store like legitimate pharmaceuticals and stuff like that in it to make sure that their kids don't get it. And he told Reason magazine that they were about, quote, giving parents and people an option to be safe and secure. But CBP gave them a binding order saying that their lock bags were drug paraphernalia and prohibited those bags from entering the country. They also seized $12,000 worth of those cases coming into the country.
Oh, wow. It's just, again, this whole war on drugs that has done nothing but destroy lives. It has done nothing but kill and murder and destroy families. And waste people's time. This right here proves 100% once again that these whole combination lock travel bag, drug paraphernalia, all these type of this BS. All it does is just makes some people. It's a placebo effect. It makes people feel good, but actually not really doing anything at all to solve the issue.
It's just it's people, you know, people, it's that they want results, but they never stop and think, you know, will this actually work? You know, it's like, that's another thing I hate about with like tragedies and all that. Is like people always say, why didn't we do something? It's like, no, that should not be the first thing we think about.
So the reason they gave for this were 2 reviews on Marijuana Blog's Weed Blog and Stoner Mom. The Stoner Mom review said, quote, "These cases are a weight off this mother's shoulders. Knowing my stuff is locked away responsibly helps me sleep easy." And the Weed Blog review said, quote, "Every responsible marijuana user does everything that they can to keep marijuana away from children. Stash Logic's locked containers," it goes on to say, "were an important safeguard."
I don't mean to interrupt you, Shane, but I gotta go. I gotta get ready for work.
Okay, thanks for joining.
Yep.
Another one bites at us.
Yeah, just you and me. So they also cited Stash Logic's including an odor-reducing pack, which led them to say that its primary intended use was drug use and was therefore drug paraphernalia.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. So it's all this other stuff, and it's not really the same thing. It's just, once again, they just say, "Oh, it's drug paraphernalia." Really? Not really. We just want to say that just to lock you up.
And Stone was offended by that because there's also all sorts of alternative uses for his product. Quote, "Our website doesn't say anything about cannabis on it. It can be used for anything. I keep a coin collection in it. My kids keep their marble collection in it."
Well, nope. According to the state, that's drug paraphernalia. Come in and they see we have to take away from your kids and family now.
Well, and apparently they've been very unclear and even contradictory about it. So he sought clarification and got permission for the cases to come into the country, but they gave him the silent treatment for 6 months and had all sorts of delays from customs officials. And despite repeated calls, customs would not say if or when they would decide on the legality of this product. Quote, "We called them a couple of times asking, 'Are you going to get back to us on this? We want to make some business decisions based on what customs is going to do.' They wouldn't tell us. They wouldn't tell us how long they'd take. They wouldn't tell us how long they had to respond to us." So Stone went ahead and ordered more cases from abroad. One made it through customs, but the other was seized. And now Stone says, quote, "We've had to lay off all but 2 of us. The person that managed our bookkeeping and inventory, we laid off. The person that did fulfilling and shipment is gone. The person that did sales and marketing is gone."
Well, of course.
And they're trying to find a U.S. manufacturer so that customs wouldn't be involved, but the high-cost labor market in America means that they'd have to completely reinvent the cases to keep them available at a reasonable price.
It's all, again, it's everything that it keeps everything in the it always tries to hurt the individual. Always try to do that. It's funny how it just keeps going. It just, it's like poetry. It rhymes, like quotes George Lucas. It continues to, hurt the people.
Yep. And I like how this recent blog closes out. It says, quote, "In an attempt to keep drugs out of the hands of children, the government has decided to go after a product which, by all accounts, was pretty good about keeping drugs out of the hands of children. Meanwhile, Tupperware containers, plastic bags, and aluminum foil continue to pour undeterred into this country."
Oh, exactly. So at the end of the day, we accomplished nothing, but we felt we wasted people's time, money, and energy. And in the end, we wasted money and time. That is the U.S. That is the USA way.
All right. Well, I guess that just about does it. So thanks, Charlie, for sticking with me to the end.
Yes, I'm here, and I'm just gonna go now and set up my own stuff now. So I'll I'll be here.
To do your own podcast, yeah.
No, podcast. That's also 2017. I'm doing the whole new thing. The video game streaming those kids like to do nowadays.
Oh, you're doing Let's Plays.
Well, Just live game streaming. I don't have the
Okay.
patience and time to do that.
All right, but thanks and thank you for watching. We'll be back next week with regular podcasts.
All right.